Great to have you with us. We have a special guest today, Peter Shir. Peter,
Thank you.
thanks a lot for joining us.
Happy to
And
do so.
so you're a student of the Bible. You're a student of Jewish studies, Second Temple literature, and the New Testament. And Peter, you're involved with distance education, the Israel Bible Center, and you lecture at a Christian college. So tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I am obviously in education. I mean, I'm a teacher. That's what I do. That's what I like. That's what I enjoy. And yes, biblical studies, Jewish studies, Second Temple. That's my areas. That's my expertise. And I think that's very interesting to a lot of Christians because whether Christians realize it or not, the New Testament falls into that era where we call it the New Testament, but it's not really, New Testament. It's just the not Jewish part of history out of which essentially, Christianity emerges and Judaism emerge and things like that. And so there's a lot of moving parts and pieces in that time, and things are not nailed down, and there's a lot of questions. And so I'm used to having a lot of conversations that kind of crossed all those lines, cross the lines of Judaism and Christianity and go into one tradition and another. And people ask all sorts of biblical questions because obviously these traditions have developed in their own directions and drifted into sometimes territory that's really not the same, but the foundations are all the same. And that's where I come in. I'm kind of the bridge between a lot of these.
Okay. Wow, sounds interesting. So food. I mean, what's more basic than food? So I work with Leked Israel, the National Food Bank. We provide food for Israel's needy. The Bible talks a terrific amount about food. In fact, what's the first controversy in the Bible?
Well,
What's the
the
first?
Bible begins with food.
Exactly.
It begins with food, absolutely. The story in the garden is about food. It's about food that's allowed. It's about food that's prohibited. I mean, if you think about it, it's you have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that is not a food for Adam and Eve. That is perhaps food for God. He's allowed to know everything that there is to know about good and evil, but Adam and Eve are not, and so they're not supposed to. They have the tree of life; they can eat from that. They have all the other trees in the garden; they can eat from that, but they can't eat from that tree, which is reserved really for God. And so the deception that happens in the garden is about food. It's the temptation. Taste this food and you will know the things that God knows and only things that God should know, perhaps. And that is the sin of rebellion, essentially. That is where the Adam and Eve take it. They take something that doesn't belong to them. And so in Jewish tradition, sort of say this, certain food that belongs to God, let's put it that way. If you think about the temple, it's very similar. There are sacrifices that are being brought that priests do not get to eat. And then there's some sacrifices being brought that the priests get to eat. And there are some sacrifices being brought that the worshiper also gets to eat, who brings them. So think about it this way. There's these categories, sort of say, of food, that's designated most holy, God only food. And then there's the priest food, also very holy, but other people are not allowed to eat. And then there's food for everybody else, sort of say, the worshiper food. And you see the same pattern in the Garden of Eden. You see the same pattern in the temple. And you see the same pattern in all the laws that are given in the Torah, essentially, that there's, food you can eat, food you cannot eat, food that you can give away to anybody. And then there's food you should not touch as a holy people, sort of say.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So it's boundaries.
Yes.
That God has set for ancient Israel. Even as a parent, we set boundaries for our children.
For
So,
various reasons, people debate all about, like, what was this all about? People say, oh, is this for health reasons? Is this for that? That's one of the biggest questions. And I tell them, I really don't know. I mean, God sets up rules, he doesn't always tell us the reasons why. He just does it. And we're supposed to believe that he's looking out for us. And so if he does tell us things to do, we're supposed to kind of take it for what it is.
Interesting. So to me, Peter, in the Torah, three types of mitzvot, of commandments: ritual commandments, moral or ethical commandments. And then the third category I like to refer to as I don't know what.
I don't know what.
Certain things that we just don't know why. God has said, don't do this, don't do that. And we don't, wearing mixed fibers, mixed, and then, why can't I sit down and have a wonderful, luscious lobster dinner? So,
Right.
So when we're as Christians, we hear the expression kosher, something kosher. I could go into my kitchen now and I can tell you that half of what's on the shelf is kosher, or even more than half. Can you just give us a brief breakdown? Clean, unclean, kashrut, kosher. What's it all about?
Sure. Yeah, I realize that's a question that's for many people is just kind of like, what are you talking about? If you don't live in that world, it's difficult to understand. Well, let's begin with this. The biblical categories that we encounter in the Bible is clean and unclean. And those are basics. So God basically said certain, all fruits and vegetables, obviously 100% clean. So every time you can eat whatever fruits, vegetables, fine. Anything that's green is growing. We're not an issue. Where the issue really rises up is in things that are animal products. And this is where the question of clean and unclean can come in. So in the Bible, it's very simple. These animals are clean, these animals are unclean. Why? I don't know. It's not a qualitative type of a judgment, why are bunnies and kittens are unclean, and a goat, which is, smelly and disgusting looking, is clean, so things like that. But again, we don't make these judgments. God says these are not. And then he gives us some categories by which we can recognize them. If they have this particular biological feature, then they fall into this category. If they have that biological feature, they fall into that category. So we're given a nice little shorthand way of recognizing what is what, so we can tell things apart. So that's really what we're talking about in the Bible. And when you're talking about clean and unclean, you're really talking about animal and animal products only. Okay. All the other things are automatically by default. They're fine.
Okay.
Now, kashrut is a whole different category. What I want you to realize is when we talk about kosher and non-kosher, we're using categories that are not in the Bible. These are post-biblical ideas that have been developed in the Jewish community, and they are based on the teachings of the rabbi. And they actually, their concern is other concerns. It's not about whether, let's put it this way: something that's clean, it doesn't mean it's kosher. So let's put it this way: if I have a big chunk of beef right here sitting in front of me, it's clean. Why? Because God said that bovines are fine, they're clean. But if it happens to be the rump, it's not. All of a sudden, it's not kosher. Well, wait a minute. You just said it's clean? Yes, beef is clean. It's fine. It's allowed in the Torah. However, it's the hindsight, and the hindsight is not. And then another thing is, how was it butchered? Was it butchered properly? Was it not butchered properly? So you see, when you talk about clean and unclean categories, a lot of times in the Bible, those are not the concerns. But in a later system, in the system of kashrut that existed today in Judaism, it matters a lot of how that cow was slaughtered and whether the blood was drained. And that's important. But those things were not really discussed in Leviticus. They're kind of there, but they're not. You don't really hear about them. So we assume that the priests had ideas and certain techniques and they followed, but all of that is oral tradition, all of that. And so that's why the rabbis sort of say, explain all that. And we have a lot of tradition that goes with this, but these rules are not obvious. And so when we say kosher and clean or unclean on unkosher, these are not exactly the same things, because we're talking about two different languages. We're talking about rabbinic language that's post-biblical, and we're talking about biblical language that's right there in the Torah. And a lot of times people just want to say, put an equal sign to it, and it's not, because we're actually talking about two different things from two different eras with different concerns.
Okay, so
you go to, go ahead.
So in order to be kosher, it has to first be clean, but being clean doesn't automatically make something kosher.
Exactly.
By the way, Peter, meet Rosalind.
Hi, Rosalind.
Rosalind has joined us.
Listen to your podcasts all the time. I just love them.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you guys are on board. So Yes, just because something is clean biblically doesn't necessarily make it kosher. Like I said, kosher is a different type of a category. It's a different measurement we use, and there's a lot more things that have to be met as far as the standards in order for something to be kosher. So when
Right.
you pick something up in a store, when you walk into a store, I don't know, you walk into Trader Joe's or something like that, and you walk into a meat department in Trader Joe's, and sometimes you'll see a little section that will say kosher, and it will say like Empire Chicken or something like that, and it will say kosher. Well, you have to realize it's not just a regular chicken that somebody stamped with the stamp kosher because the rabbi said a blessing over it or something like that. Actually, it was a chicken that was slaughtered in a very particular way. The blood was drained, it was soaked in salt and water, and
Right.
there was a special process that it went through, actually, besides just being chicken like every other chicken out there on the shelf that's in a section right next to it that's not marked with that same sign kosher. So you see what I'm saying? Both chickens are clean. There's nothing wrong. Bird is a bird, and it's the same animal. It's the process that it went through, essentially. And so for Jewish people, people who are observant, having that kind of meat is important because it is a part of a tradition. It's a part of life. It's a way of life that people have been living for a long time. So people just forego, sort of say, eating food that's not going to meet those categories. Why? Because the belief is that this is important. This is what God wants us to do, and this is our way of life. This is our tradition, and we're going to be faithful to that, essentially. That's really where you will see a lot of people will, let's say, be disagreeable. Sometimes they'll say, I don't want to eat this because I don't know what this is,
Right.
essentially, where it comes from,
It's
or things like that.
yeah, it's interesting, Peter, just how pervasive, how ubiquitous the kashrut in the food that we get at our grocery stores. I'm just looking while you're talking at this water
Yes,
bottle in front of me.
yes, yes.
I don't know if we can see it. We can see COR on it,
COR, yeah.
Committee of Rabbis. You might see on your box of cereal an O with a U in the middle of it, Orthodox Union, the circle with a K for kosher.
Yes.
And so I have friends, and there are people that I've encountered. They're in dairy products, they're in various food processing, and they'll tell me about, yes, once a year, the rabbi comes in, he looks at our operation, checks for cleanliness, checks the ingredients that we're using. The rabbis helping protect us and
Yes.
making
Yeah.
sure that our food is up to snuff.
Yeah, they're just telling, basically, they're giving their stamp of approval, and they're telling the consumers that, hey, we looked at this, we checked this is good. Have no worries. We're looking out for you, essentially. And that's what it is. It's like a certification step. It's like nothing. It's like certified organic. It's the same thing. Only the companies that get to put on their organic products that seal, if they got the certification. And this is what it is. Keep in mind, that's a modern thing. 80 years ago, you would not have found products stamped with that kind of sign. This is a very, very modern.
Okay.
As our food production has become commercialized, and we no longer have individual farmers and things like that, and individual little mom and pops organizations producing everything. Now we have these big agro businesses. Yeah, now you can certify an entire product, and you can have a whole brand stamped with that sign, essentially. And so, yeah, it's become a big industry, but it gives people a sense of mind, like they can be calm about it. They can say, I know that it's been checked, I know it's fine, because these rabbis, I trust them. And it's kind of silly, people, how can you make water unkosher? Right? Why do I need to stamp water with kosher? I do think sometimes it goes a little bit too far, perhaps. Water, it's water. Well, can you possibly make it not good? Well, and it really has to do with the process. It's the production part. There's a lot of things that can happen in production that would invalidate it, that would make it not good for you, essentially. And so the rabbis check it. They say, okay, then that little stamp goes on. So you'll see those pretty much on a lot of products.
Peter, we're just scratching the surface.
Yep.
We want to delve in our next meeting, our next episode. We want to get really into the Word of God and look at some things in the New Testament, food. And so I think we're going to get into some interesting subjects. But I want to thank you for just sharing with us kashrut and what it's all about. So, Peter, your website, Pshir, PSHIR.com. What are we going to find on your website?
What you're going to find on my website is all kinds of articles really geared for a audience that loves the Bible. I mean, most of my audience are Christian audience, and they're curious, digging into all sorts of things. And so my expertise, of course, are Hebrew and Greek and New Testament and Second Temple studies. And like I said, I live on a convergence of all of these things just coming to the surface. And so I spent a lot of time researching New Testament. I spent a lot of time researching various topics that are connected to it. And so people will find educational videos, they'll find books that I recommend all the time, because people ask me questions all the time. And a lot of times they're the same questions over and over. They're kind of repeats because they're going down the same road and they get stuck and they can't find an answer, right? So what do? I create materials that answer those questions, essentially. I point them towards books that give them guidance to grow in this particular area, because they can't get those answers, if they go to their pastor and they ask, and the pastor says, I don't know. Well, that's because it's not their area of expertise, obviously. So in many ways, I kind of fill in that gap where we're helping people to find what it is that they're looking for, and providing guidance and leading people into a whole area of studies, really where that world of Christianity and Judaism converges, because Judaism hasn't really emerged as Judaism just yet, and Christianity hasn't really emerged and become what it is today. And so we have a lot of common shared ideas at that point, and people don't realize how many. So I like to highlight those things. I like to show and explain, go into teachings of Paul and explain what he was talking about. What was his Jewish mind thinking and saying, to his non-Jewish audience that he is writing to, and things like that. Or I may be digging into the Gospels and explaining, what does it mean to be a rabbi or something like that? What are some of the teachings of Jesus are, and where do they come from? What do other rabbis teach? All kinds of things that you'll find on my website.
Excellent. So we have the link below. Yep. Please check out Peter's website. And Missing Ingredient. Is this your newest book?
Oh yeah, that's this one. Yeah. Actually, not my newest one. I just released another one, but this is yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. So Jesus said man cannot live by bread alone. So when we're talking about recipes here, we're really talking about digging into the food, the spiritual food of the Bible.
Yeah, I know it looks like a cookbook. A lot of people look at it and say, it looks like a cookbook. I said, well, kind of like a cookbook, but it really is a cookbook for your Bible reading.
Exactly. Context, getting into the meaning of the words themselves. Peter, thank you very much for joining us. And we have a link to where you can purchase the book below. Check it out. I'm Ray McDonald with Elected Israel, the National Food Bank. I've been talking to Peter Shir. He is an expert on food in the Bible. Peter, thanks again, buddy.